Good afternoon, I am Precious Mzea Sakaleji. Welcome to Camnet TV Media News, the headlines. Zambia's external debt hits $14.48 billion. Amending the Public Order Act tops government's agenda on law reforms. Join me with the media news in detail after this commercial.
Would you like to win some cool cash? Say no more. Stand a chance to win your share of 1 million kwacha. Simply make a transaction from your Zamtel mobile money account and you could be one of weekly winners of up to 10,000 kwacha. Be empowered with Zamtel mobile money. Dial *344# to activate your account. This promotion runs from 28th July to 31st October 2021. Zamtel, your digital lifestyle partner.
And now the media news in detail. The Zambia National Education Collusions Annex says irregularities revealed in the Auditor General's report in the education sector should be followed to the latter, as huge sums of money which could have been used to improve education in the country have gone to waste. Among the irregularities include payments amounting to over 130,000 kwacha to 182 officers who, after a head count, were found absent at their respectable stations and neither were they known. In an interview with Camnet News, ZANEC Executive Director Mr. George Hamusunga states that this waste of funds has been happening against the background of some public schools lacking in terms of infrastructure, desks, textbooks and other necessities to ensure conducive learning.
Although Zambia aspires to have acquired universal access to quality education in the country by 2030, the quality of education in many public schools has been less than ideal, as it has been followed with reports of inadequate infrastructure like desks, lack of textbooks, dilapidated school buildings, and at the worst, it is reported that some pupils in rural areas still learn under trees and sit on the floor during lessons. One could attribute this to the lack of adequate funds to support this sector. The Auditor General's report for the financial year that ended December 31st, 2020, however, has revealed that this is not the case, as the sector actually lost millions of kwacha due to irregularities. Among the misconducts were the payments of salaries to 182 officers who were found to be non-existent after a head count. The report also shows that salaries amounting to 139,000 kwacha were drawn by an officer who was not known to the head station. It is further indicated that as of June 2021, these people were still on payroll. The report has also revealed that about 68 teachers from Isoka district have been on payroll without authorization. Illegal payments for leave days, terminal benefits, and settling in allowances, among other payments, were made without necessary documentation being provided by the beneficiaries. These irregularities have angered the Zambia National Education Collusion, ZANEC. Collusion Executive Director Mr. George Hamusunga was speaking to Camnet News.
All this is something that we would not want to happen, especially in an environment where the education sector has so many problems. For instance, the quality of education now is at its lowest. The impact of COVID-19 has led to the loss of learning, with most of our children unable, for instance, to read a simple passage because they have lost their literacy skills after staying at home for a long time. And we need to invest in a lot of inputs. We need this money really to go in areas where they will make impact. We don't have classrooms in some areas. Some community schools have no proper, classrooms to learn from. They do not have water and sanitation facilities. But we are seeing a lot of money in the Auditor General's report, which is misused all the time.
Meanwhile, the report has also revealed that 32 million kwacha was spent as interest payment for late payments to suppliers. The ZANEC Executive Director has called for this policy to be revised, stating that it breeds room for corruption.
There is no way you can put a clause in a contract that if I will not pay you within the contract period, then charge me 6% of the total contract. That is ridiculous. So we need to review these contracts, because when this happens, and these are issues that breed corruption, where institutions will delay deliberately to pay the contractor so that the contractor is in turn entitled to additional funding, which they would in turn share.
He says if Vision 2030 of quality education is to be achieved, all loopholes should be closed, failure to which this sector will continue losing funds which are fundamental to improving education. Zipporah Mshala, Camnet News, Lusaka.
Finance Minister Stumbeko Msokotwane has revealed that the total stock of Zambia's central government external debt stands at 14.48 billion United States dollars. This validates President Hakainde Hichilema's statement that the debt was higher than projected by the Patriotic Front government. As of August 2021, Zambia had 12.7 billion in external debt. Speaking in Parliament Tuesday during the update on the state of the economy, Dr. Msokotwane says there is also substantial domestic debt, including arrears to suppliers that the government must deal with, which makes the situation even worse. The finance minister says the growth of external debt from less than 2 billion United States dollars in 2011 to its current levels of about 14.4 billion reflects one of the worst economic blunders during the last 10 years and has significantly contributed to the suffering witnessed in the country today.
Debates had surrounded the revelation by Zambia's 7th Republican President Hakainde Hichilema that the country's debt levels are above what was being projected by the previous Patriotic Front administration when he featured on an interview program with the BBC. While many criticized the president for saying this, Minister of Finance Dr. Stumbeko Msokotwane has confirmed this revelation and has told Parliament that the stock of the central government external debt now stands at 14.48 billion United States dollars. While the Zambian economy is faced with a number of challenges, growth has been sluggish, fiscal deficit have been persistently high, debt is unsustainable, inflation is in double-digit, the exchange rate has been volatile, and interest rates have remained high. The combination of these challenges have brought about suffering among the Zambian people.
When we add the 1.57 billion of debt by parastatus that government had guaranteed to creditors, the total external debt as at the end of 2021, June 2021, stood at 14.48 billion. 14.48 billion.
The minister also elaborated on one of the effects of excessive borrowing.
Let me elaborate on one of the effects of excessive borrowing, namely inflation. It refers to the continuing rise in consumer goods and services. You will recall, Madam Speaker, that for many years, inflation rate was well below 10% per year. However, as at the end of August 2021, inflation was recorded at 24.4%, which is too high.
The minister also says the overriding economic policy adjustment for 2022 and the medium term will be to transform the economy, expand it, and create employment opportunities.
From now onwards, the war cry will be economic growth, and economic growth. Everything we plan and talk about will be about strong expansion in production. And this House, Madam Speaker, has an important role in this war to get production up every year.
The minister is at the end of October expected to come back to the House on the instruction of the President and government to present the 2022 national budget, or Zambia's transformation journey will start. Prudence Chota, reporting for Camnet TV News.
In other news, the Zambia Federation of Employers, ZAFE, has expressed confidence that Zambia's economy will attain a boost if economic reforms announced by the new administration are implemented. The country's economy has been limping following the depreciation of the kwacha, coupled with business restrictions that came along with the coronavirus. In an interview with Camnet News, a Federation Executive Director, Mr. Harrington Chibanda, however, says Zambia is set to bounce back once reforms are actualized, backed with investor confidence from the international community.
the cost of doing business in the country is high, and we're expecting that under the new Dawn government, I think so far with the pronouncements that the president has made, we can see some light at the end of the tunnel, that the measures that have been pronounced will to a great extent address the current high cost of doing business. And when the cost of doing business are actually addressed and they are lowered, we anticipate a boom in business where we see a lot of businesses expanding and new businesses starting, so that we can actually have a good number of our Zambian people being employed in the formal sector, where they will actually be able to have what we call decent jobs.
Government says reviewing the Public Order Act is among priorities in the ongoing law reforms. Justice Minister Mulambo Haimbe tells Camnet News that this is in the view of resolving the shrinking civic space in the country. And Mr. Haimbe says the political parties' bill is also on the queue of bills to be worked on. He further states that under constitutional reforms, adopting the Bill of Rights will soon be undertaken based on availability of funds to conduct a referendum.
During general elections, opposition political parties are disadvantaged. This is because the ruling party makes it difficult for its competitors to mobilize voters using the Public Order Act. On several occasions, people expressing themselves have ended up behind bars, and the just ended August 12 general election was no exception. The now ruling party, the United Party for National Development UPND, while in opposition, felt the wrath of the law during the tenure of the Patriotic Front PF. I spoke to Justice Minister Mulambo Haimbe to get the way forward on the political parties' bill as well as the Public Order Act, which continues to shrink the civic space.
Work was done on the bill. As to when it will be tabled, I'm not quite certain. For us, the priority is the Public Order Act and similar pieces of legislation. The political parties bill, I recall going through it some time back as a legal practitioner. There are some provisions there that need to be cleaned up in terms of the way regulation of political parties is done. So as at now, we'll have to take it back to the drawing board, to take a look at it with a fresh pair of spectacles and get the necessary approval from Cabinet for us to then table the bill before Parliament.
He says amending the Public Order Act will be dependent on the commitment of various stakeholders, as government remains resolved to make sure that the law benefits all Zambians.
It hasn't yet gone to Cabinet for Cabinet to give a go-ahead. But again, work has been done already on that particular piece of legislation. A little bit more cleaning also needs to be done. But in terms of the scheme of things, it would be a priority over many of these other pieces of legislation for it to be looked at. So for us to get approval from Cabinet to begin the enactment process.
Why is it priority?
I think the President gave guideline, very clear guideline, that we want to use the expression that was used, a productive mind. A free mind is a productive mind. We want people to enjoy their freedom instead of what we have been seeing in the past. And it was one of our promises, and we want to ensure that we fulfill those promises so that you don't chase us from office.
Mr. Haimbe also highlighted that under constitutional reforms, adopting the Bill of Rights will soon be undertaken based on availability of funds to conduct a referendum.
Yes, there's two aspects to constitutional review. Anything outside of Part 3, you have to have a 2/3 majority from Parliament to amend. So that one is less onerous, and actually the Bill of Rights, which, as you rightly said, the President has talked about wanting to ensure that we include socio-economic rights. That will require a referendum. So if the money is found, that's a process which we are willing to do. But with the constitutional amendment, you don't rush it. What we've seen in the past is rushed constitutional amendment processes, constitutional, what's the word I'm looking for? Review processes. But that's why we've had these difficulties that we are facing. This time around, we want to make sure it's done once and for all and done properly. With the will of the people, with the involvement of the people, we want it to be consensus-driven. So
one only hopes such reforms will be done based on the interest of the Zambian people. Patrick Soko, Camnet News in Lusaka.
Well, that news item brings us to the end of Camnet TV Midday News, but before we go, here are the headlines once again. Zambia's external debt hits 14.48 billion United States dollars. Amending the Public Order Act tops government's agenda on law reforms. Thank you for joining me. I am Precious Mzeya Sakaleji. Good afternoon.